Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. And I'd like to welcome you to this webinar that we're offering on accessing the learning site. And we'll be going into more depth on the different features of our learning site and how you can use those to teach remotely. I am recording today's session, and the video of that recording should be available in about 24 hours. And you'll either receive an email with a copy of that recording, or it'll also be available on our website at waysidepublishing.com. And so before I get started, let me tell you just a little bit about myself in case you don't know me. I started my career as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I started upon return to the United States as both a French and Spanish teacher, but then morphed into just Spanish, which I've done for more than 30 years. I love teaching, and I was very excited a couple of years ago when Wayside invited me to be an author on Entre Culturas Tres. So I'm very biased. I love these programs. And a little over 3 years ago, I joined Wayside full-time as an instructional coach, which means that I get to share my passion for the programs with teachers like yourselves and help you access our approach and feel comfortable using our online platform, the learning site, which is what we're going to look at this evening. I'd also like to introduce you to two amazing educators who are joining me this evening. Kristen Blees is one of our other instructional coaches here at Wayside, and Jennifer Cornell is the Learning Site product owner. They're assisting me in the background, so if you run into any technical issues or when you have questions and want to post them, you can do so via the question box that you'll see on the panel. I think it's probably to the right of your screen. You'll find that question section, and so you can post your questions there or your issue, and they'll help you. Remember, in the first part of our presentation, we're going to be looking at the learning site, but in the second part, we're going to address those questions. So please post them. And then in the chat box, you're going to find a link to some additional resources that we offer. And then I've also uploaded for you under handouts a couple of documents that you might find helpful. The first is a step-by-step how-to of the learning site, which if you don't have that already, you'll want to download that. You know, when you need to remember, like, how did she assign tasks? You know, you can check there. And the other document is something that coincidentally Kristen and Jen put together that talks about tips for using the learning site while you're working remotely with your students. Okay, so we'd also like to know a little bit more about all of you. So we have 3 poll questions that we're going to ask. So be ready. Kristen, let's have the first one. So what is your comfort level with navigating the learning site, you know, for getting around? 1, this is still a goal. 2, I can do this with help. Or 3, I can do this independently. And if you've been using our program, you know those are the same self-assessment components that students have. We never say, I can't. You know, if we're not there yet, then it's still a goal. So take just another second or two to rate where you're at with navigating around the learning site. Okay, Kristen, let's close that and let's take a look at the results. Oh, very good. So this will help me as I'm reviewing some of the features of the learning site. It helps me know how fast or maybe what some features are that I want to share with you. Let's look at the second question. This is going and extending just a little bit further. So now, what's your comfort level with using the learning site with students? And again, the same three kinds of indicators. This is still a goal, not doing it yet. I can do this with help, or I can do this independently. Another second or two. Okay. I feel like doing a countdown. Okay, so let's stop the poll and see the results. Okay, so for some of you, that's still something that you're just not comfortable with yet. And that's fine. Hopefully after today, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable, especially with certain features of it. So now then we have the third poll question, and it kind of piggybacks on that last one. And in this one, we want to know, before this week, when so many of us went remotely, how often have you been using the learning site with your students? So either not yet, maybe 1 to 3 times a month, 1 to 3 times a week or so, or daily. You're a power user, right? So let's see. Oh, the results are coming in. Okay, so let's stop that poll and see where everyone's at in terms of how often they're using it with their students. Okay, and so again, fewer of you are using it on a daily basis with your students. And there's so many reasons why that's the case for us. It may link into our comfort level, but very often it might be linked to our students' access to devices. Not all of our schools have one-to-one access yet. So we may be using a cart. We may be having students use their own devices in combination with some devices provided by a school. We may not have had students using it outside of class because of their lack of access, so there's so many factors that go into that. But again, after tonight, we hope you feel more comfortable about having to use the learning site and that you'll really be anxious to do so. Working remotely online or online in an online environment is something that I really enjoy doing, and I've been doing with my classes since probably the 90s. Can you close that poll for us, Kristen? Thanks. So here are our two outcomes then. I can navigate the online learning site, and so that includes those three components: our flex text, which is our e-textbook, the Explorer, which is where all the content is, including assignments and grades, and then the portfolio, which is a way students can show what they know and can do. And then the second outcome is that I can integrate those various components in order to engage my students, facilitate feedback, and then promote that student self-assessment. Okay, so that's what we're hoping to accomplish tonight. Our agenda looks like this. In the first part of our session, we're going to go on the learning site. I'll take you right into the learning site, and we'll look at the flex text, the e-textbook, and how to navigate that and find resources there. And then we'll look at Explorer, where all of those resources are housed. Remember, think of it as your file cabinet. We'll also take a look at assignments and grades. And then we'll look at one of my favorite features, which is the classroom forum, because this is where you can build community. It's kind of like Facebook, and so you can interact with your students, they can interact with you, and they can interact with each other. It's more asynchronous, so it isn't necessarily that you're all on at the same time. You could be, but you don't have to be. No, just like Facebook. And then we'll also take a look at the online portfolio, and then in the second half have time for all those questions. Okay, ready? So let's go. We're going to go then into the learning site. So bear with me as I switch over to that. Yay. Okay, I'm waiting for my PowerPoint to close so I can get to my learning site. And here we are. So when you first log into the learning site, with your credentials, you're on what we call the dashboard, and you have your courses. So each of these textbooks represents a different course that I have. And of course, I have every course that we offer, every textbook. But you'll have them just for the classes that you're teaching. And so these are what we call the course, but if you scroll on down, you also see the flex text library. Excuse me, and these are the e-textbooks. And you'll have, as the teacher, you'll have both the student and teacher version. I'll tell you a secret, I very seldom scroll down here because I can access my e-textbook, my flex text, through my course. So I just come to my course and I click on the book and go. And this brings me then into what we call Explorer. This is where all the content is housed. So all of the resources that go with the activities in the book, all of the videos and audios and handouts and flashcards and online activities that students can complete. Everything is in this content section. And I think of it almost as my file cabinet, right? So it's organized just like the units of my textbook. And I'm in the Spanish 1, but this is the same for any of the levels of any language. They're organized by the units of the text. And if you click on any particular unit, you'll see that there are additional folders and that those are also organized according to the breakdown of the units of that particular text series. So in Entre Culturas 1, I start with a compara, where I'm comparing a Spanish-speaking country to a US state, depending on the unit. And then I have my Comunica section, which is where all of the vocabulary and grammar structures are introduced. The Encaminos are formative assessment. In level 1, we have an Explora section, which goes deeper into some of the cultural pieces. And then we always have that summative assessment, the Vive Entre Culturas. In the French, for example, you'll see instead of in camino, they have the j'avance for the formative assessments. And then they have j'y arrive for that summative assessment piece, okay? And so all of those resources are there. Wherever I see a triangle, it tells me that there are even more folders embedded. So if I click on the title of the folder, I can see all of those additional folders, or if there are any loose documents as well. So again, these folders are organized by either the cultural reference or our video bloggers. You know, those, each unit has a video blogger who's a young person who's not an actor, but either a relative of one of the authors or a relative of a friend of the authors. They're just real kids, and we gave them a guide and they created videos for us on these various topics according to whatever the theme is of the unit. And then based on the video they sent us, we created a series of activities in the textbook around what they shared. And so in this folder, you'll see any of the additional resources besides what's in the textbook that help support those activities. So for example, we have her video here, and Actividad Uno didn't have any additional resources, so everything that goes with it is in the textbook. But here we see a handout, looks like a piece of paper, so it's a PDF document that goes with Actividad 2, Paso 3. And when I click on that, it opens up in a separate tab and is a PDF that you can download or that your students can download as well from their accounts. Everything that you see tonight on my account or on your own account as a teacher is exactly what the students see. There are just a few things that are different, and I'll point out what those are. But the cool thing about these PDFs are that students can click right in them and type. They can then save this as a PDF to their device and then submit it to you any way that you have students submit materials, whether you're using Canvas or Schoology or a Google Classroom, or whether you have in and out folders on a server at your school, however you currently have students turn in digital materials or materials digitally.
Hey, Debbie.
We also see that.
Debbie?
Yes.
Can you go back to that PDF and show teachers how to download and save that PDF?
Sure. So you do have several options. The one I think that most teachers find the most useful, you can always download the document and then type on it, save it to your device and type on it. Just as you would anything else. But the other option is through the printer. So I can go to print, and I don't think you can see my pop-up window. So a window opens up, and it gives me the options to either print this document, or I can save it as a PDF, or I can save it to Google Drive. And so we recommend saving it as a PDF to your device or saving it to your Google Drive. The students would save it, add their name to the file name, and then, as I said, once they've saved it, submit it to you in whatever way you've already set up for students to submit materials digitally. Okay. Here we have an activity with the conversation bubbles that is one of those online forum type activities that I mentioned earlier that's like Facebook. So there is a prompt that students are given, and then they can write their response in the text box and post it. Or they can upload another kind of file, like a photo or a PowerPoint or a comic that they've created in another program. It'll take virtually any kind of file format that attach and upload. or they can make audio or video recordings right here and share those as well. They can also then reply to each other. So in addition to submitting their own post, they can then reply to other students' posts as well. Okay. And the other types of folders that you're going to see under the Comunica or the Comunicon sections center around the vocabulary or the grammar pieces. So in the Spanish, remember the grammar or the vocabulary is así se dice, and for the grammar, it is the observa. In the French, we have the comment dit-on, and then the grammar is the découvrons. Because remember, for our grammar, we're using that discovery approach. And again, these folders hold all of those resources that accompany different activities. So here we have for actividad 3, actividad 5, actividad 7, etc. When you see a stack of papers, these are flashcards that students can do. They're very often the target language to an image, but sometimes they might be the target language to English, you know, especially for some of that vocabulary like transition words or conjunctions that are hard to provide an image for. But as much as possible, we want to have that direct Spanish to image relationship. In these Spanish 1, in the Entre Culturas 1 flashcards, they have an audio piece with them as well. Students can use the front and back arrows to move through the cards, and then the up and down to check their answers. The responses, instead of being a single word very often, are the word in context. So we have the soy entrenador, me gusta trabajar en un campamento de fútbol, right? And so there's the trainer in the, you know, soccer camp. And I can click on exit to leave that. Let's go back and look and see if there's some other types of activity types. So we know that the paper, the page is a document, a PDF that students can download. The little megaphone or speaker is for an audio file, and a camera would of course be for a video file. The stopwatch with the question in the middle of it are embedded activities. So I love the fact that we offer different choices for accessing or completing some of our tasks. So you might see an activity in a text, and you know that you could have your students do that activity on a piece of paper or on a Word doc, or there might be a handout online that they can use, or it might be embedded. So you have that variety of options to use according to the access that your students have to technology. So let's take a look at this particular activity. At the end of the name of the activity, and I love that it gives the page numbers, so I can find it very easily in my textbook and see which, you know, activity it is and how it's set up. But there's a little circle with an I, and when I hover over that, it will give me a clue as to what kind of activity it is. So this is one that's a fill in the blank. Some of these online activities are these kinds of discrete items like fill in the blank, multiple choice, true, false, matching, and the computer can grade those for you. And that way then students get immediate feedback. they find out what they got wrong, but they don't see the correct answer. So that way they can redo the activity multiple times. The setting by default is 3 attempts, but I'll show you a little bit later how to change that. Some of you have told me that you're setting yours at 100 attempts. So students can go in there as often as they need to and practice and try to do the activities and you know, be better and better each time at them. Some of the activities are more open-ended, writing or speaking, and those are things that you would have to grade as the teacher, and we'll take a look at some of those as well. You can also preview the activity by clicking on the preview button. Under these embedded activities, you see a lot of options. On the others, it might just be an option to assign or to view and assign. But on these embedded activities, you can preview them. You can also see how well students did. So you can see the grades of your class, of the all of your students, and how well they did on this particular activity. And you can assign it then. I think it's cool that when you do the assignment, it tells you how many students you assigned it to. And that's another feature that we'll look at in a minute that I absolutely adore, is that we can differentiate, and we don't need to assign every activity to every student necessarily. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit more. And then there's some adjustment for settings that we'll take a look at later. But let's preview right now and see what kind of activity this is. So this is an activity where students are going to hear people talk about who they are, and they're going to select the picture that corresponds to what they hear, right? A nice, straightforward initial kind of input activity as students are learning this new vocabulary, in this case, nouns that describe who we are. The cool thing is students can manage the audio themselves, so they can pause it, they can rewind it as often as they need, and they submit their answers online. So when they click on a particular drop-down box, they have the choices and they'll choose the one that they think is the right answer. When you preview this, you are going to see the correct answers here, okay? Obviously, students do not see that. It's blank when they first log in. Here we have another type of embedded activity. So I'll go over to the info bar. This is another type of fill in the blank. It's about famous people. Let's take a peek. And in this case, students are going to make a choice and then write in which of the two choices the famous person is. So, you know, Lionel Messi, is he ciclista or futbolista? So they're going to write es futbolista, right? And it's just reinforcing, beginning to learn to write that vocabulary as well. And I want you to notice too that it says extension after it, or in the French, you might see activité supplémentaire. These are activities that don't appear in the textbook. These are additional, in this case, vocabulary practice. And we have this kind of additional practice for the grammar and even for the bloggers. So let's look back up here at Maria Laura. You can see we had a folder of extension activities. And when we look at those, there are 5 different activities that help students go deeper into understanding the information she shared in her video. So if you have accelerated students or heritage learners, these are good tasks to give them to help them go deeper into understanding all the information that she shared. Because if you've listened to any of those video blogger excerpts, you know that they're very often using language that may be above what our students can do, but we're asking students to do tasks that they are capable of at this point in time. So like with Maria Laura's video, the kids are listening for her name, her age, where she's from, and what she likes to do in her free time. Boom. But she talks about some other things. So these kinds of extension activities can take students deeper in that sense, or depending on the type of activity that it might provide additional review for students, especially with the vocabulary and grammar structures. These activities also will run from some of those discrete item tasks into the more open-ended tasks where students are having to write or speak. So for example, on this, we have a matching, and then we have a fill in the blank, and then another fill in the blank, is it true or false? And then this is a long answer. So they're going to use sentence frames and compare themselves to Maria Laura. How old are both of them? Where do they live? What do they like to do? Do they have anything in common? That kind of task. So in each of these folders, you'll see then a whole series of supports for the activities in the book, and then some extension activities that are additional practice. Okay, so I think it's a good idea to go in and look in the folders and look closely at some of these activities as you're planning. But I also like moving from the actual e-textbook, the flex text, and finding my resources. I think it's much easier that way. So let me then go from the content into our flex text, our online textbook. And you as the teacher, when you click on that link, on that tab, you have two choices. You can go in through the student text or through your teacher edition. Now, I highly recommend using the teacher edition for your planning, because there are all kinds of additional supports and suggestions that the authors have provided for teachers on how they might group students or organize a certain activity, or they might have provided background information about a certain concept. Answers are included there. In the appendix in the back, you'll find the transcripts for the audios and videos. So all kinds of resources. But if you're going to use the text also to display and interact with the students, when you're in class with them, then I recommend going in through the student edition, because that doesn't have all of the TE markup on it. I'm going to go in tonight through the student edition. Students, of course, only have the student version. They don't have the teacher version as well. Okay. So again, the text is organized just like the table of contents in the actual textbook. The pages match. The only difference is that instead of pages being side by side, you're scrolling down. Okay. You see each of the different sections, just like the folders are set up, and as I said, just like the table of contents in the book. So you have an initial comparison between the Spanish-speaking country and the US state, or in other levels and texts, just background information about the country of focus for that unit. You have, then it goes into, usually the video bloggers are introduced at the beginning of each unit, and then the vocabulary sections. So if we were working on the second set of vocab, así se dice dos, or if it was the comment dit-on de, then I can just click on that title and it'll take me right to that vocabulary. You know, very straightforward. And across the top of the panel here, or the menu, I have 4 icons. So this first one is a list, table of contents, okay? The second is a search feature. So I could search for a particular topic. A lot of information comes up. So I might not use this as much as some other teachers might. They might find that very, very useful. I'm usually impatient and want to get right to my page. So I either go in through the list, or I love this third icon. It's a piece of paper with an arrow. And generally when I'm planning, I know where I've left off in my textbook. And so I can just type in that page number. So let's say we're on page 54. So I type in the 54, hit return, and pow, I'm on page 54. It's very handy, it's very quick to get around. I'm gonna look at the last icon in just a few minutes. We're not gonna look at it just yet. First, I wanna point out some other features of the text. As you might have been able to tell from the beginning of the presentation tonight, I love PowerPoint. I love creating PowerPoints, and I probably overdid them when I was in the classroom. I did move on to Prezi, but still. And so with this, I wouldn't need to spend all that time creating all those PowerPoint presentations, because I can actually display these pages and work with the activities and the images with my students right here from the textbook. These 2 little arrows, when I click on those, allow me to expand the page and collapse that menu so that I have more room to work. So let's say we were going to do this activity where we're going to, kids are going to take turns asking if they like certain activities or not. I could display this model for students to follow along. I could have them focus on a particular segment or images, and we could have conversations about those. So it's very, very useful to me. I want you to notice too, if you haven't already, as you're going through the text, you see little icons in front of the different activities. These let you know what kind of a task it is. So for example, here we see the conversation bubbles. So that's telling me that it's going to be an interpersonal conversation, and quite possibly it might also be in the forum. Remember that Facebook type of activity, so that students could do it as a written interpersonal task, or they could videotape themselves speaking, or create an audio and respond to each other's audios. Of course, they can always go low tech and just turn and talk to each other, but when you're teaching remotely, this comes in very handy to be able to have students use that forum in order to continue those interpersonal tasks, even though they're not synchronous, okay? Also notice that you'll have a compass very often by some of these activities. So here we see a compass, here we don't see a compass. So remember that our online component with all the content is called Explorer. And so we're using a compass icon to refer to Explorer. Yeah, like that connection? And so every time I see that, I know that there are resources online to go with this particular task. So it's probably that online forum. Up here, there was nothing. The students are just going to use the content that's right here in the textbook. They don't need anything additional for that task. The cool thing that I like and that makes navigating between Explore and your flex text so easy is that you can click on that compass and it will give you a link to all of those online resources that go with this particular activity. So here it is a forum, and I love this. I just click on that link, and boom, we were in the flex text, and now it brought us over to the content folder to that actual forum activity. So now the students can talk about their favorite activities. They can write in here and say what they like to do and respond to each other, obviously in the target language, Catherine, not in English. And then, carry that conversation in writing back and forth, kind of like, text messaging or chatting. Or they can submit audio or video recordings and listen to each other's responses and respond orally as well. So that's a really neat feature that you might find useful if you're teaching remotely with your students. Now, I want to get back to the book, right, and see what other activities there are and what else I might do. Voila, at the top here, I have a link back to the flex text. And as the teacher, I have a link to either the student edition or the teacher edition. The students have this too, but obviously they just have a link back to their student edition. So they can come over here from the flex text, do this activity, then click on flex text, and it takes them right back to that exact activity. The precision is amazing. It's not like just in the ballpark. It takes you right back to that activity. So it's really, really handy. So we scroll down to Actividad 14, and again, in our grammar approach, students don't do traditional kinds of fill-in-the-blank grammar activities after they've examined the concept. They get right into using it in context. And so in these activities, you're going to see that they're either reading and answering questions, or listening to something and answering questions about that, or taking notes, or they're writing or speaking to each other where they're using that particular grammar structure. So in our first step, they're looking at notes posted by 4 classmates, and those notes are right here on the page. And then based on what the students shared, they're going to pick a student that they'd like to be their roommate at summer camp. And they have to copy down the phrases of things that they either had in common or that caught their attention as to why they wanted to choose that roommate. In the second step, then, they're going to write a note to that student and introduce themselves. So I see a piece of paper and a pen, so I know they're writing a note. Let's see what kind of online resource there is for that. So if I click on my compass, I see it's another forum activity. So the students are going to write their notes to that student on the forum, and then they could choose to respond to each other's information and share what they have in common or what they like and don't like, etc., and interact with each other in that fashion. Okay, so I had mentioned the note. It's a little notepad with a pen. When I click on that, it shows me, it says notes, and it shows me a whole series of kinds of notes. If I click on one of these, so let's say do this. Something that I wanted to do as a jigsaw was my note. I can leave myself notes about the way that I've used certain activities. So maybe I did this particular task as a jigsaw, maybe I had students act it out. And so I can leave myself that note as a reference for later, for next year, to check in and see that. I also love having my students interact with the text. So I might have them in a particular reading, maybe highlight words they know in blue, words that are cognates in pink, a piece of information that was new to them in purple, and something that they have a question about in yellow. And then they jot down the question as well. So I can have them interact with the text in that fashion. And then their notes show up over here as well, and they can click on them and link back and forth. So it's just a question of click, highlight, add the note, and save. Boom. And then it's added to your lists. Okay. So that's our flex text, and the way that you can navigate from there to the content tab and find information or the resources that go with a particular activity. It makes it very seamless to go back and forth in that way. So let's say that you've found a particular activity and you want to assign it to your students. You noticed, or I hope you noticed, that when you've gone through these, or when you saw me going through them just a few minutes ago, that under the title of these assignments, there's the actual word assign. So when I check out an activity, I can then assign it to my students to do right from here. Very often we think of assignments as something you might do for homework, but you all, if you're working and your students are interacting with you remotely, you're leaving daily tasks, not just quote unquote homework tasks. And so you can select all of those and assign them right from here. It makes it very convenient, very straightforward. Click on assign. And this is a feature that I love, is that we can differentiate. So there may be certain tasks, like those extension activities, that not every student needs to do. So I could just pick a couple of students to do a particular activity, and then I'm giving other types of activities to the other students, right? And differentiating that way. Or I can select all of my students. Very easy. Click next step. I select my due date. Let's make it Monday. And I can select a time that it has to be done by a certain time of the day. So if you want students to complete certain tasks daily, you might set it for 5 p.m. each day or midnight. It's up to you in terms of the time that it needs to be completed by. You can set these up and assign them with a delay so that they don't show up on the list, and then you would select the day. So maybe they don't sign up until, or show up until the day before on a particular, on the list, so that students aren't overwhelmed with all the different tasks that they might have to do. Again, less is more. This is a new situation for many of us as teachers, but also our students. And we might want to maybe not overwhelm them with so many tasks as they're getting accustomed to this process, because you know, we can get carried away with, oh, they should do this and this and that. And then next thing you know, they've got 20 things to do. And no. So I've set it for Monday. They have to get it done by 7:47. And I click assign now. It's that easy. I selected my students, I set the date and the time. It shows up on my assignment list. So let's go over there and see if it did. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Okay. So let me find it. I wonder why it's not showing up at the top. Oh, I think this is it right here. Okay, 3/19 was when we assigned it at 6:50, and it's due on that day. You can, and the students can manipulate their own lists. They can sort it by the date that it was assigned, either the most recent or you know, the latest. They can sort it by due date as well. Notice that items that don't have a due date are listed first. And those might be things like flashcards, for example. You may not have a due date for those. It's just an open-ended assignment for kids to practice their flashcards. Okay. And then you're given an indication of what kind of a task it is. So this we can see the little clock with the question mark. So that tells me that it's one of those embedded online activities. This one is a handout. This was a video, etc. The students, when they come in to complete their assignments, just have to click on the title of the assignment and they'll taken right to it. They don't have to go looking in the folders for any of their tasks. They just click on the title and their assignments. And I'll show you their view in just a minute. One of the features that I really like with this is that it will show me how many students I've assigned a task to and how many of them have completed it. So it tells me that I've assigned it to 5 students and none of them have completed it yet because it's not due until next week. So, you know, they won't do it right away. In this particular task, we see that I assigned it to 5 and 1 student is, you know, very eager and has gone ahead and done it ahead. If I click on students, it will then show me exactly who has and has not submitted their work, completed their work, and it's color coded. So it's in red if they haven't completed it yet. Here we had 1 student complete it. So when I click on students, the student who has completed his work, his says submitted on time in green, and I can click and it'll take me right to his assignment so I can take a look at it. If I have to grade it, I can grade it. You know, I have access to that right away. Let's see another one. Ooh, this is a good one here. If assignments are overdue, then you'll have a notice of that. Notice it'll tell us too items that, you know, are due tomorrow, due today, and this is overdue. So when I click on students, then again, it'll just give me the red indicator that they have not finished it. You're going to see some other indicators. One is that if you see a yellow dot, it tells you that something needs to be graded by the teacher. So here we have a task that was part of an assessment. Students had to create their own video blog to introduce themselves to another student. And I have that little yellow dot. This is an open-ended writing and speaking assignment. So the computer is not going to grade that for me. It's something that I would have to grade as the teacher. And then it tells me who has done it and hasn't, and I can click on that and go to the results. The student view is my preferred view as well, and that's the calendar view. So when students come in, they see a calendar with all of their tasks that are due each day. So for example, today we had Actividad 5. When students come in, they just have to click on the title and it will take them, and then click and it will take them right to that activity. They don't see the edit and students buttons. Those are for the teacher only. It also indicates here that it's a task that the teacher is going to grade. It needs to be graded still. And here we have a little red triangle, and that tells us that the task is overdue. It was supposed to have been done this afternoon, I think around 3:30, and nobody did it. You know, none of my students did this one. It says 0 out of 5 completed it. They're all overdue. So when I click on students, I see that no one submitted it. And the same with this one. This activity was also, I think there were 2 of them that I had assigned for 3:30, and they did neither of them. Oh boy. And so you can see then all of those different activities and when they're due. You also see the little indicators as to what kind of activity it is. I just hover over the icon and it'll tell me a video, an embedded activity that they call quizzes, a document, etc. Okay. I can, you know, this list and your calendar can get pretty full, and really more so in the list view, I think. But occasionally you're going to want to hide some of those previous tasks so that students aren't overwhelmed and you aren't either by the length of the list or the view on the calendar. So you can easily archive activities. So when I'm going to go into list view, and if I click on archive, it will allow me then to select certain activities that I can remove from my list, and it doesn't delete them, it just hides them. And so I don't have any that I'm going to remove. If I want to see any that are archived, I can click on Show Archived. I only have 2 so far that are still on my archive list. And so I can unarchive any of those. So I might decide that I want students to repeat a certain activity, because remember, they can do them multiple times, and they still need practice with a certain skill. And so I'm going to have them do this again with just a little twist to it, you know, that sort of thing. So I can unarchive, and then I just select the tasks that I want to unarchive. Click unarchived. Are you sure? And you say yes, and then it adds it back to the list and in the appropriate space in the calendar. If I click remove, and I'm going to unclick show archived so I see my full list of assignments. If I click remove, it removes the assignment and any grades attached to that assignment. So unless I want it cleared out of my grade book here as well, I wouldn't want to click remove. And at the end of a marking period, you may want to do that because you've moved the grades over to your grade book, let's say, your school grade book. And so you could remove those, and then it eliminates the task from the assignment list, but also the grades as well. So generally, we're just archiving at this point. I can add an assignment here as well when I'm in this window. The difference with this is that I have to find the assignment, right? So I know which one it is. I'm going to do the question words for vocabulary, and I click and drag, or I could just click an activity and do it that way. I can also double click and an activity will slide over. The advantage to using this is that I can assign more than one activity at a time, but they'll all have the same due date. And that may be something that you want to use. So then you click next step. Oh, we've already done that activity. So let me undo those, find something else, and click those, and they come over to the list. Keep your fingers crossed. Yay, they haven't done this one yet. So again, I could differentiate or simply click select all students. I go to next step. I set my due date. Let's make it Tuesday. Assign now, and it'll show up on the list. So by adding an assignment from the assignment tab, I can assign more than one task at a time, and they'll have all the same due date. When I assign them from content and click on an activity and find something that I want to assign, I can just assign that one activity at a time. So I'd have to, if I had 3 activities that I wanted students to complete, I'd have to repeat this 3 times. Okay, so you can decide which works better for you, and it may vary from circumstance to circumstance. Okay, so now your kids have done the assignments. They went in, they looked at either the list or calendar view, they clicked on an assignment, they clicked on the title, and it took them to that assignment. They click on attempt. They don't see all of these buttons, by the way. They see attempt and their grades, period. But you, of course, have all of these options. So they click on attempt. They've done the activity. This one is an open-ended writing task. So they blah, 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 blah. They have to write an email for Paola, and then they can click submit. Are you sure you want to submit that? Yes, I do. And voila, yeah, it goes in, and it tells the student that the grade is pending because this is an open-ended type of a task. So now and notice it opened up not in assignments, but over in grades. So now as the teacher in grades, I come in and I see all of my students. I see how many tasks they've done and how many of those need grading still, okay? Because remember, some of those discrete items, the computer is going to grade for you. The student, when they click on grades, only see their list of grades. So if I click on Serena, this is what she sees when she clicks on the grade tab, all of her assignments and the grades she has gotten on them. These items were graded by the computer. They were more discrete items, matching, fill in the blank, multiple choice, etc. But where it says under evaluation, a 1 or a 2, this tells you as the teacher that you have to grade this particular task. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these. Oh, this was the one we just did, but Serena did it much better and has already completed it. So this was writing an email to Paola. And so the cool thing as the teacher, when you go in to grade these, you see the prompt. So you remember what kids were asked to do, and then the student's response. So as you're reading through these, you can use the rubrics and complete your assessments. So I can remember the annotation in the textbook and the flex text. I can do that here too. So I might highlight certain vocabulary or structures or content and leave my students some feedback, especially in relationship to the rubrics. So I might put something in here that says, como más detalles, right? So give me some more information. How is your family different? Okay, blah, 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 blah. And then I can hit save. The student, when they come in, then they see this feedback and get your comments immediately in direct relationship to the particular task at hand and what they've done with that. I was going to say something else about that, but you can add as many of those as you'd like. You can color code them. So remember that, I might have yellow for more details, or green for grammar structures, or blue for vocabulary. Purple might be a kudo. I'm saying something nice about what you wrote, etc. You can create your own legend for those so the students understand visually, and then you assign it a grade. However you do grades and convert those from the rubrics, and you can leave additional comments for the student and click save, and then they get a notification. Up here, there's a little bell. We'll take a look at it in just a minute, but they'll get a notification that you have graded their work. So gives them a heads up, and they get that too when you assign a task as well. I love I think we have a speaking task that students had to do as well. And I love what our learning site helps you do for providing feedback to students on their speaking. So this was, remember the students, we saw this earlier, they had to create a video that introduced themselves to an exchange student that they were going to host. And they had to include things like, their name and age and what they like and don't like and that kind of thing. And so they recorded it. They can either do an audio or a video recording right online. And then you'll see their response in here and be able to play it and provide them feedback. Under either the audio or video that they've submitted is a link called Add a Comment. So as I'm playing this.
Hola, yo soy Serena. Yo tengo 15 años. Yo soy.
Boom, I clicked on Add a Comment. And now I could leave her some sort of note related to what she was saying. It could be related to details, her pronunciation, length of her sentences, depending on the proficiency level. There are all kinds of things that you're going to want to comment on, perhaps. And then I click play.
Day, Minnesota. You are.
And I can add comments as often as I need to. And another cool feature is that I can leave a recording. Now, before I left the classroom a couple of years ago, I was teaching level 1, 7th graders, and they never heard me say telefono. But inevitably, when it went to time to speak, that came out of their mouths. I could very gently just click my microphone, telefono. And then they get a link that they can then play back, telefono, and hear the correct pronunciation or any other type of oral feedback that I want to give them, about their work. I can do that as many times as I need to. And then the same thing, I assign a grade, I leave a comment and click save, and then the student gets that notification on the fact that you've assessed their work. Okay, so let's see, we've done the flex text and content, assignments and grades. Let's look at settings before we go to the classroom forum and students, and then we'll open it up for questions. Under settings, we've given you the opportunity to control some features of the learning site. So for example, under assignments, by default, we don't award a late penalty or a penalty for late assignments. But you might decide that that's something that you want to do. So you can click yes, and then you can say what percentage of reduction will the late assignment have. So like 40%. And then when you click save for anything turned in late, that will automatically be deducted. I'm going to turn it off because I don't like that. But under quiz, this is a really cool feature. By default, students will see a pass-fail status by their attempts, but you can turn that on so that it doesn't show. So do you want to hide the pass-fail status? And you would say yes. So it doesn't give them a pass or fail, especially if you're doing proficiency grading. Pass-fail doesn't quite fit in with that. It's that you meet expectations or you're approaching expectations, not there yet. By default, students have 3 attempts to complete any of the tasks. You can change that. So remember I mentioned earlier that I have teachers who set it at 100, and then students can just go in multiple times and try to complete different tasks because those online tasks are practice. If I have a task that I want to limit, so let's say I'm going to use a particular activity as a quiz, a formative assessment, I can go in and I can, on the task, set the attempt to just a 1. And so then for that particular task, they'll only have 1 attempt at it. I could also just simply tell my students, if we look under grades again, so let's look at Serena. Did you notice that there were 4 different grades listed? So it lists the first attempt, the last, the average of all their attempts, and the highest of all of their attempts. And it tells you how many attempts they did. So she did 2 because her first one was 67%. And she said, no, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to try it again. So she did it twice. So I know her last attempt, her second attempt was 100. The average was an 84. I might have told my students, I'm going to use this as a formative assessment, so I'm only going to take your first attempt. I want to see how well you do on that first try. Or for assignments, I might say, go for it, and I'm going to take your highest attempt. So you have lots of flexibility. Just make sure that, you're telling the students ahead of time which of those scores you're going to accept. And if you're having them do them multiple times, you may just be looking at a type of, participation type grade where they did them, as opposed to the actual grade, because if it's practice. The other thing that you're going to want to set is your passing grade according to whatever it is for your particular district. In my district in Maryland, it was 60%. So I would change that to 60. I click save, and now this applies to all of the activities online. The third component that teachers also love, and many of you probably do too if you've used it, is the show hide content. By default, students see everything. So, in the textbook, they see the formative assessment tasks. They see what they're going to be asked to do, or they see the summative assessment. They see what they're going to be asked to do. But in the book, they don't see the nitty gritty. So they don't necessarily see the videos, or, they don't see maybe the checklists or the sets of questions or the bullet items they need to include in their writing. But all of those are in the content folders, so they could find them. So you have the option to go into a unit and uncheck those folders. And so I'm going to, in the Spanish, my formative assessment was En Camino, and my summative assessment was Vive Entre Culturas. I unchecked those. So when I click on content and I go into Unit 1, you'll see that those folders are grayed out, which reminds me as the teacher that they're hidden. The students don't see this at all. Those folders don't even exist on their view. Okay. You can hide entire folders. I could hide, all of Unit 6 if I wanted to, because we weren't there yet. Or you can, within a folder, just hide certain documents within a particular folder. You don't have to hide the entire folder. So you have lots of control for doing that. Okay. So let's go back to content. And we're down to talking about the classroom forum. And I mentioned earlier, this was one of my favorite features because this allows you to establish a sense of community with your class, even when you're working remotely with them. So when you click on, when you first come into your course and your content, on the right, at the bottom of all the folders, you see Classroom Forum. If you haven't been using this already, when you click on this, yours will be blank. We've given you some ideas for how you might use this space, but it's up to you what you want to post here. So you can, post a daily reminder of what students are to do that particular day. So you can share a list with them, an announcement, remember to do X, Y, or Z. You can post a welcoming video, once a week or every other day. So you can record yourself and post a video where you talk.
Hi. So here in this audio or this video text box, you can quickly hit start recording and record either a short mini lesson or maybe just a note to your students, yes, checking in with them and see how they're doing. You can give a little comprehensible plan, a little comprehensible lesson, or you can use this video in any way that you'd like.
Okay, that's Michelle Ola, one of our other instructional coaches. And so, you can put your posts in the target language. It's very easy to add a post, just like we saw before on the forum. You can type messages to them. You can create that video recording or just an audio recording, or you can upload all kinds of files. I have 2 more examples here for you. For example, this says, click on the photo and answer the questions in your response to this message. So this is the photo that the kids get. Where are the cow, oh, I spelled that wrong, and the dolphin going, and what are they going to do there, right? So the students then are going to reply to this, and they're going to say, van a la playa, van a nadar, right? And submit their reply. They could, upload their own images as memes in order to share their response. Or you might want to, keep kids up to date with cultural happenings. Those of you who are teaching Spanish know that today is El Día de San Jose, and in Valencia, Spain, they've already done it, but they burned the fallas, the falla mayor, and so you might be able to share with students information about this holiday and how it's celebrated. So you can give them a little bit of a description. You can insert links that they watch. So for example, and I don't know if this will show up. Let's find out. Oh, it did. We may have to get through ads first, but okay. So they can watch then that video.
Hola amigos, hemos venido, Lola y yo, a Valencia.
Okay, and so then students are asked to note in their reply details that they learned, 3 details they learned about the fallas and whether they would like to attend and why or why not. And so the students are going to hit reply and share that information back. Just a way to get them involved in the language and communicating interpersonally back and forth with you and with each other. So I love, love, love this classroom forum. It's a great way for you to interact with your students and them with each other. And then our last component that we'll just look at very quickly is the online portfolio that students can complete to showcase what they know and can do, and to reflect then on their growth at gaining proficiency. I used to have all of those bins in my classroom with all kinds of artifacts that we collected from student work, and then they put them together in a binder or a display of some sort and write reflections. But I love the online piece. Under the student tab, you have a roster of all your students and you have a link to their portfolio. The students own their portfolio, so they manage it, but you can view what they've done. We can see here several things that Catherine has completed. It can be overwhelming. There are lots of can-do statements, right? The mi progreso or the mon progrès in French. So I, as the teacher, might want to look at the ones she's completed I can select the intercultural can-dos or the communicative. I'll take communicative today. And by particular units, right? So let's say it was unit 6, where they're talking about weather and what kinds of clothes you wear, depending on the weather circumstances. It also involved geography features. So here we can see that she assessed herself. For this can-do, I can identify geographical features. She ranked herself a 2 out of 3, which means she can do this, but still with some help, not independently yet. And when I click on the can-do, I can see she can write a reflection of what she has done. So you might give her, give your students some reflection questions. What did you do well? What would you like to improve on next time? What do you need to do to move forward to the next proficiency sub-level, etc. It'll give you the date of the item that she's uploaded. In this case, she linked an online activity, so you can then click on View Attempt, and it will take you then to that particular task, so you can see what she did for that. So let me log out real quick and log back in as a student so you can see it from the student side. You're probably imagining, if you haven't explored this already, you know that students with all of these features can submit things in writing, or they can upload another file, or they can do an extemporaneous audio or video recording. They can also link to activities they've done online on the learning site. So as a student, this is a student portfolio or student account. So she has the portfolio link. She clicks on that. She chooses the portfolio, and most of your students only have one, unless you've been in like Entre Culturas for a couple of years, then your students may have several of these across the different levels of the text that they've been using. The same thing, she can go by filters. She's probably going to look at ones she hasn't completed yet, and she's going to look at a communicative, and let's do unit 6 again. So let me go to unit 6. And she has not uploaded anything or attached any evidence to this can-do about identifying geographical features. So she's going to click on that. The first thing she does is a self-assess, and she's like, oh, I've got this. I can name them. I can tell you all about them, explain them, etc. And she can either do an audio recording. So she would click audio and then click start recording. And so my voice is being recorded, stop recording. And it will show up here underneath her reflection space. She can write her reflection here about how well she thought she did and what she's been working on to do better. But she also wants to upload some activities that were done online. So under Add Quiz, she clicks on that, and it'll bring up all the activities she's completed, sorted by unit. So under Unidad 6, Unit 6, we see that there are 2 that apply to the geography piece, and she's going to include both of those. So I click add, and those are also added to her evidence. So she has 3 pieces of evidence where she's showing that she can do this independently. She clicks save, and now we'll log out, and when we log back in, we'll be able to see, as the teacher, we'd be able to see her work and how she rated herself under that. Now I'm running over, no surprise. But there's so much to tell you about this. So we would like to have time though for questions and some answers. So I'm going to leave this here for now, and we're going to go back I'm going to have Jen and Kristen come online with us so that they can help answer some of these questions. Kristen, I know, has, or at least I'm hoping that you've added some questions there.
Yes, I've been getting a lot of questions during the webinar. I tried to answer them and keep up, but there are a few that I wanted to ask you and Jen about. First, Teresa asked or mentioned that she's enrolled as a teacher in her course, but she hasn't ever set up her students. So if other teachers are in that situation, what would you recommend them doing? Contact their account manager to help or the tech team to get set up?
Yeah, I'm gonna unmute myself. Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Well, I was going to say probably to contact their tech team, and Jen, you can help with this, because we have a variety of ways that you can set your students up. You can get codes and then assign those codes to your students, and on your pane, on your panel, your control panel under the handouts, that first one about getting started guide, that walks you through very clearly how to assign those codes and how to have your students sign up. But we also do a process called rostering, where our IT talks to your IT, and they can do that behind the scenes for you. Depending on your situation in your district, your IT department may not be in the building and be able to do that piece. So I would start with them and see what they say, and then contact us so that we can help you with that, either with your IT people or by getting the codes and doing the setup. Does that make sense, Jen?
Absolutely, yeah, that was great, Debbie. I'd also add that if your district also integrates with an LMS, there is another option with integrations with Canvas Schoology as Google Classroom. So the first step is definitely your IT, talk to our IT, talk to your account manager, and see what the best option will be for you.
Good.
So Jen, since you mentioned Google Classrooms, I had numerous teachers ask about how they add assignments to Google Classroom or how to upload things to Google Classroom. Can you?
Perfect. We are so excited about our Google Classroom integration. And Debbie, if you wouldn't mind highlighting on Explorer, you're not going to see it right now, but just visualize with me. If you have Google Classroom enabled, while you're on the Content Explorer side, go ahead and open up one of like a Unit 1 folder, for example, Debbie.
Okay,
the integration that we have with Google Classroom is the sharing of assignments. So when you're in the Explorer, perfect. On the right, open up, a folder. And where Debbie was showing you all those subcategories like preview, assign, etc., there will be an extra tab there that says share. And that is once it's enabled, and from there you would then be able to click on Google Classroom, and then Google Classroom icon pops up. It walks you up through the steps of how to assign something to your Google Classroom courses. And for students, they would see the link that would then take them directly into the learning site to complete activities.
very cool.
So to start, get in touch with us, your account manager, so we can look into getting that set up for you.
Perfect.
Great. So someone also asked if our gradebook links to other outside gradebooks. Jen, can you answer that one?
Sure. Well, we at Wayside are so excited to announce that coming soon, there will be a new enhanced gradebook for teachers. And one of the things that we'll be adding is the ability to do grade passback. At this time, you would have your export grades where you would then still have to manually enter into whatever platform you're doing with gradebooks. But we know this is something that you guys are looking for, and stay with us. And if you see Debbie at the very top in the learning site, the what's new item right there, stay in touch with us and you'll always have access to what's being released and what's changed on the learning site.
Right, because there's a new update coming out. What just came out?
It did,
with some
yes.
updates.
Today was our celebratory release of 10.2. So you can read there all the things that have been updated.
Okay, another question was about, and this is something I know nothing about, so Jen or Debbie, maybe you might know. Someone asked, or Juan asked, if he can use an electronic Apple Pencil in the flex text.
I don't think we've had that question asked. I have no idea, but we can follow up and find out for you and let you know.
I want to say no, but we can probably follow up, double check with IT, because maybe there have been some, upgrades that I don't know about. I know that some of the schools, they use something like Notability to be able to annotate, like the PDFs. If you're on a tablet or an iPhone, you can't just type in the PDFs like you can on a Chromebook or even a Mac laptop or a Dell laptop or any other kind of tablet. You have to use a program like Notability or one of those to be able to annotate and type into those. But maybe with the pencil you can now. So yeah, we'll check with our IT, and any of the, we have so many questions probably coming in because there's so many of you online, which is very cool. But if we don't get to all of your questions, we're going to capture everyone's questions and answer those and post them on our website. So we'll find the answer to that too and post it.
Okay, Debbie, I had someone ask where the rubrics are located. Can you show us that, please?
How could I forget to show that? Under all of your programs will have a resource folder, and except for the Only for Teachers folder, that's obviously just for teachers' eyes, and students don't see that, but they see all these others. So they have access to all of the rubrics. And in that folder, they're going to see and you too, the analytic rubrics. And we have 4, one for interpretive skills, one for interpersonal communication, and then one for presentational speaking and presentational writing. We have the holistic rubric, again, those 4. And then we have the specific rubrics for the summative assessment, the Vive Entre Culturas. And these are holistic rubrics that are aligned specifically to the tasks on that assessment. And the French, I believe, has also a specific rubrics for their formative assessment as well.
And Debbie, someone just asked if those rubrics can be altered at all.
No, they can't be. You'll also find the rubrics in the appendix of the teachers, of both the student and teacher edition, and in the hardcover of the textbook as well. They're in the back section there.
Jen, I have a couple follow-up questions on Google Classroom.
Okay.
Teachers were confused and weren't able to follow the instruction. They're asking if we can demo that on our screen. I don't know if we have that capability.
We don't have it enabled on this account right now. What we could do though, on our, give me a second, we can send that out in the follow-up email for sure. We have a lot of great information about the integrations that we do on our waysidepublishing.com website under integrations, and Google Classroom is our most recent integration out. So we are getting ready to put all those resources out for you guys. We have a guide and a little video tutorial, so we could definitely send that out in the follow-up for you, because I agree. I know without a visual, it's a little more challenging, but we promise you it's a click, and then it takes you right into Google Classroom, and then the assignment gets posted in Google Classroom, and it's easy access for you and students.
Great, thanks, Jen. And Debbie, we've had a couple teachers ask about getting another view of the student view, what it looks like when they log in and what they see for assignments and maybe completing an oral or writing activity.
Sure. So when students log into the dashboard, they'll only see, their particular course. I obviously have courses for every textbook. They usually only see one of these and an expired one from, a previous course. So they'll click into their course and they come right into the dashboard, just like you do. Into that content folder. Oh, this is interesting. I don't have a flex text. Let me try a different textbook, because when don't we have the flex? Oh, we have to go in separately? I did not know that.
No, it's just we are using fake accounts, right? And so you can go on the bottom, but it will be there for students once their students are enrolled.
They should see their flex text, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm like, I thought I remembered we had a flex
it's
text.
late, but you're right. You're spot on.
Okay. So they would have their flex text, and I usually recommend with teachers that they train their students to, you're either going to your textbook, so open to page such and such in your book, or they're coming right into assignments and seeing what assignments are up. And remember I said that for them, their default is the calendar view. And so they'll be able to say, oh, for today, here's my assignment. They click on that, and they can click on attempt to try to do it, or they can just click on the title. They can also see any grades that they have if they've done that assignment multiple times. So if I click attempt, it takes the student right to that particular task, and they click start. And this is an open-ended writing task. Oh, that's that email to Paola, so Paola, otra vez. Okay. And then they click submit. Are you sure? Yes. And they're done. And then they can go back to assignments as well.
And Debbie, it's open up. Yep, there you go. To say those icons of submitted on time or grading available are really helpful for the students to know when things have been graded for them or if something's overdue.
Yeah, I'll make that just a little bit bigger so if you can see that if you squint in at your computer. So the teacher is going to grade this, and they submitted one attempt and it was done on time. Remember, they have multiple attempts. So she can go then and click attempt and click start. And this is, remember, this is the video that she's going to complete to talk about herself and introduce herself to her exchange student, so she can click on either start audio recording or video recording and, just start talking. Oh, my camera's not set up. I'll do audio. So here I am recording myself, and I'm 14 years old and I speak French and Spanish. Sorry. Obviously, they do it in the target language. And then she clicks stop audio recording. She can listen to it again and decide if she wants to submit that or not. If she doesn't, she clicks start audio again, and it'll tell her that you're going to replace whatever you recorded before. Are you sure you want to do that? And then they have the option of re-recording it right here before they submit it. Are you sure you want to submit that? Yes. And so voila, she has submitted it. And this is, remember, what the teacher would see as well. And here's her recording. Okay, it's very easy, very convenient to do.
I think that was a good demo, Debbie. Thanks for showing that student view for us.
You're welcome.
We've just had a few teachers ask about Canvas. Let me see what some of those questions were. Like,
Okay.
How do they submit grades or post to Canvas?
So we have two types of integrations for Canvas, and this is the Google Classroom example. I don't have a demo here to show you at this time, but on our waysidepublishing.com site, we do have a couple guides and documents to show you, learning site and then integrations to show you where these guides live for reference. And so the first one you'll see is a video for the external API app, which means you, in Canvas, you on your left navigation bar, you would have a link that says Wayside Publishing Learning Site. And when you click on that link, it would open up the full learning site for you and for your students to have full access. The other example, so within that view, you're staying within the learning site, but you're still within Canvas. The other integration that we have that we just released today in our 10.2 release is the Thin Common cartridge. And the Thin Common cartridge is all of our content packaged into different modules for you. So when you're in Canvas and you click on the modules navigation bar, all of our resources will show up for you that you can publish, unpublish, you can then assign, you can then link the different items onto your Canvas home pages, etc. With the grades, that is still in development with Grades Passback. So that is coming soon, stay tuned. But we definitely can get you set up with Canvas, talk to your account manager, and then our IT would talk to your IT about that.
Great. I just had a question and deleted it. So give me a minute to see if I can remember it. In the meantime, let me find another question. Oh, it was about the attempts, Debbie. Can you show again how a student would see how many attempts they have left? And what does it mean when it says the attempt was canceled?
While I'm logging in as a student, maybe Jen can talk about, or you, about the canceling.
Yes, so by default, students get 3 attempts, but you can change that to be infinite, unlimited attempts, so that way students can take the activity as much as they want. If they start something and they cancel it, that counts as one of their attempts. So they would have to go in and you as a teacher, if you wanted to delete that attempt, you could remove that attempt. But students, when they take their activities, it tells them how many attempts are available. So students can go back in and do another attempt if they want.
So when I click on attempt, excuse me, it tells me that there's one question. There's no time limit on this. For some of our, at the AP level, some of those tasks do have time limits, just like the AP exam. Remember in the settings, I changed passing to 60% and I changed the number of attempts to 100. So this tells her that she's done 2 out of 100 attempts. Okay. And so if they have fewer, as a teacher, you can go in, you know, if a student inevitably, I remember in other programs, my students would come to me and say, oh my gosh, I had to leave the task and set the table for dinner. And when I came back, it had timed out and I have no more attempts left. So I could manually go in and delete an attempt. And so as the teacher, you can do that. And I think that then that frees up one of their attempts, correct?
You can, yes, the reason, but like I said,
maybe.
they have additional, yes.
So Debbie, would that be the same situation? You said, like, for example, they went to dinner and then they timed out. One teacher is saying that sometimes it shows that it took the student hours to complete an assignment. Would that be they just left the tab open while they were doing other things?
Exactly. Exactly. So here we have, for example, a student, let me look at their grades and see if this works. So Serena completed this, and you could see that first one, you know, took that long and da-da-da-da. I could easily X that out and it removes it then from the list and frees her up. So if I click the X and then I come back, see, it'll record that she just has one that she attempted. What other questions do we have then?
Oh, there's still a lot of them in here. I'm trying to go through them and answer some of them behind the scenes and ask you guys some of them. Another, Stella has asked if there's a way, and I don't think it's possible, but I wanted to check with you guys, if there's a way they can view the student portfolios all at once so that they don't have to click on every student.
No.
There, no, that's correct. It's correct. What to make it easier though to go through the different portfolios is if you have, click on a student portfolio, once you set different filters, it will allow you to navigate through a little bit faster.
So speaking of the portfolio where you can upload evidence,
Yes.
Are there any limitations for the type of audio or video a student could upload as evidence, or for in the classroom forum as well?
No, they're allowed to upload audio, videos, PDFs, documents, all kinds of files are able to get uploaded to the portfolio.
Right. I think there's a limit, like if they're recording themselves, I think there's a limit of like 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
For that. Mm-hmm.
Going back to Canvas integration, and I know we have this, but I'll let you answer it, Jen. Where can they find videos or PDFs about Canvas integration?
Yes, great question. Yep, thank you, Debbie. On the integrations, our waysidepublishing.com/learning site. And then there's a drop down about integrations, rostering, teaching remotely. And Debbie is already on the integrations page. And so you'll see as more and more guides are getting prepared and ready in videos, there'll be linked here. Another way to view videos, some to Canvas and open it up to other types of videos, is through our Need Help button within the learning site. And you can go on to, Debbie's going to show you the Need Help, yep, right there. And then you'll see that there's a knowledge-based tips and tutorials.
And this will take you to the channel, correct?
It will, yes. And so we're always adding more and more to this. Feedback's important. It helps us grow, and we want to make sure we can support you guys as much as possible. So with the Canvas, just talk to your account manager and we can get you set up.
So while we're in here too, if you need help, click on this. If it's urgent, call us. But you can also email, and I love this feedback piece. Some of the improvements that Jen has made in the learning site with the team are based on feedback that we've gotten from teachers and students. For example, the flashcards, I think we had initially the control with the mouse, and students were like the mouse is so old school, can we just use the arrows? And so our developers revamped that so kids could use the forward and back and up and down arrows to go through those flashcards. But when you go into the feedback, you could say, I just have general feedback, and we like positive feedback as well as any corrections you might need us to make. But you can then also be more specific. So heaven forbid, but if you do find a typo or a content error, we need to know immediately so we can make that change. Or if something isn't working for you for some reason, please let us know that as well. And our support team gets back within, at the very latest, 48 hours. But they're very much on top of this. Yeah, very responsive.
Okay, here's a grading question. And Christina's asking if a teacher can see student work done only on assignments that were assigned by the teacher, or does it record any and all activity, even if chosen by the students?
I'm saying yes, that it does show that you can, like if a student just randomly goes in and tries different activities, those will show up in their list of grades. Which is why there's, some consistency here in terms of the numbers of.
Yeah, and we'll be, with the new gradebook, we'll be adding more icons and some dashboards, so it will become even clearer to you as a teacher, but yes.
Mm-hmm. To be able to distinguish between those that you did assign and the ones you did.
Yeah, more questions.
We're down to 3. We're down to 3. Someone's asking if there's any way to print any of the vocabulary activities.
Those embedded activities, no, they aren't print friendly in that sense. So like if I'm looking at, some of these extension activities down here, like this one, that's not printable.
Stay tuned. We're always looking at updates for making our flex text even more interactive.
I should always
take
say,
a screenshot.
I should always add yet afterwards, right?
but for right now, you could take a screenshot in the flex text if you needed to, share it to Google Classroom, put it in the community forum, because we know many students have different needs and for accessibility and requirements they may have for learning plans. So there are some options.
So you could take a screenshot of that, you're saying, and then post that in the classroom forum that we showed previously down here to share with students.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, Christopher is asking if you can assign the can-do statements.
I believe.
Yeah, well, I was going to show you one way. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yes. So when in the recursos folder, there is a folder for Mi Progreso or Mon Progrès, which are the can-do statements. This is a PDF format. And again, so then students, can type in those and record how well they've done and all, and keep that as a log, download it to their device and keep that log. But you'll see underneath is the assign button. So you can assign them and they can receive them through the assignment tab. What were you going to say, Jen?
I was going to say, I was thinking the question, that was a great example. And then to follow up, once inside the portfolio, at this time, when you're within the portfolio, you don't have the ability to assign an individual can-do statement, but that is something that we are reviewing. So for now, we've got the PDF.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Stay tuned.
Okay, iPads. We haven't talked about iPads. Do they have the same functions as what you've been showing us online with your computer, Debbie?
And as I mentioned before, the only thing you can't do is to type in those PDFs. You're going to have to use something like Notability or Notes Plus to be able to do that typing. But we're going to check out the pencil. I'm thinking the last time I tried mine, it didn't work. But again, it may have been in one of the updates. But the other thing you're going to need for either an iPad, not any tablet, just the Apple brands, like so the iPad or the iPhone, is you need an app for that because of the recording pieces. And so very conveniently, right here on the dashboard, the students can come in and they click on iOS app. If they're allowed to add things to their iPads. If your district does that, then they can download this and load them onto the iPads. It's free. They can search in the App Store for Learning Site or Wayside Publishing, and they just download the app and install it on their device, and it works beautifully.
Yeah, and I was going to add on, if you don't mind going to the flex text while students are in the iPad, and this is on whether on mobile, any device, or on the laptops, if you go to, Debbie was showing you those compass icons, and if you click on a video one, so click on any video blocker, like Maria Laura or something with the video icon. What's nice, we've heard people say, well, on the iPads, they're really appreciative that the fact on the video icon, the video pops up right there for students, so they never have to leave the flex text, and they have all the related items on there. And on a smaller screen, it's even more helpful, right?
And there are this little square, you click on that and it'll make it full screen for you. And then you just need to, click on that again to reduce it. And it will also play if there's an audio file available. That audio would show up right here as well. So I don't know if it, so if I click here, oh, that one's embedded as a quiz. But very often if there is here an audio file for this vocabulary, it shows up right here and I can play it here. I don't have to leave this page.
And that works the same on on cell phones as well, correct?
Yes. Just make sure you're using the Chrome browser. Don't use, for Apple, an iPhone or an iPad, you need the app. But on any other device, make sure you're using Chrome as your browser because it plays nice with Chrome.
I know it's 6:03 and we were supposed to end at 6. We still have a few more questions that have come in, and I realize some people are probably going to have to drop off the call. But is it okay, Debbie and Jenna, if we continue answering a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Yes,
okay. I have a question about differentiation. And can you differentiate by having different passing scores or a different number of attempts for individual students?
That's a great question. At this time, go ahead, Debbie. Did you want to? I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, go ahead. I was just trying to think how you could finagle that. It's not.
Yeah, I know.
Built in.
Correct. And so we're looking at some options at how to make that even more personalized, right, in terms of attempts, because we know, but what's so great is as a teacher, I can cancel some attempts, obviously, if I wanted to. So if I needed to do that for particular students to help out, it's a little small workaround, but like I said, we are looking at how we can individualize that.
Can-do statements. Someone's asking if they're included in the AP text. I know they're in AP, the Triángulo Apreciado, the new
Yes.
AP textbook.
But
Were they in the previous version?
no, and they're not available for the French AP. The German does have that because it has then the portfolio, the German AP, but the French does not. And Azulejo does not, because it was a previous version before we started integrating the can-do statements and added the portfolio piece.
Okay, another quick question about going back to cell phones. It's available both for Android and Apple cell phones, iPhones?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
With Android, there's the app or the full product. I would assume you were referring to, Kristen.
Yes.
I believe, though, for the Android, all they need to do is access it through the Chrome browser. They don't need an app. That's just for iOS devices. And Android, has a different operating system. So it plays nice with Java and all of that for the recording. And so just need to use Chrome.
Yep, so Android just goes through the web browser, and for iPhones, they use that iOS app there.
Exactly.
About videos, can you turn off the subtitles in a Vive Entre Culturas video, Debbie?
Yes. You have the option of showing them or not, and the subtitles are always in the target language, right? So let me look at one and show you. Also note that, if you need Plan B, you can always download our audio and video files as well if you need to do that and share them behind a protected environment such as Google Classroom or Schoology or something. You'll see the three little dots in the lower right corner. When you click on those, it gives you the option of turning captions on or off.
And this is our last question, okay? Our last question for tonight. Any suggestions on how to modify assignments and teach virtually?
I wonder what specifically they're asking about that.
I'm not sure, but this question is from Gina, and Gina, I will reach out to you and get more information from you on that question. Right. Okay, Gina?
Oh, thanks, Kristen. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so the last comment says, "You guys are awesome. Thank you for all your help."
Thank you.
And that this is the best textbook ever. So we're gonna leave it on that note. Hopefully we got most of your questions tonight. If not, please, Debbie, do you have that PowerPoint with the email where they can contact us if they have any questions that were not answered tonight? And also a lot of people were asking about the video recording of this. And correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, but it will be sent out within the next 24 hours, correct?
Yes.
And that will just be an email to anybody. That will be an email to anybody who registered for the webinar, right?
Yeah, whether you were able to join us or not. So you'll have that as well. And on that email, then there'll be a return email. I posted the where you can find some additional resources that we've put online. And online, there's a way to contact us as well as through the Need Help button. And if you have a specific question for one of the three of us, you can always direct it to us that way. And the support team will make sure that we get the message. But on the follow-up email, you'll have my email. And then if you need to contact either Kristen or Jen, I can forward that to them very easily. Our entire team is here to serve you. And we thank you for joining us this evening. And we want you to stay safe and stay well. And so have a really good evening, and hope you can join us over the next couple of sessions that we do. Okay, thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.